very good evening to each and every one of you. Welcome to our broadcast. Share the live for us. Smash that emoji button. Folks, we got a guest tonight and we're going to switch things up. We're getting right into that discussion. And then we're going to right into that interview. And then we're going to pick up on some of the day's happenings at the other side of that. Folks, of course, you know, we had a parliamentary sitting quite recently and we discussed a very, very important piece of legislation. This is the Oil Pollution Prevention, Preparedness, Response and Responsibility Bill of 2025. Myself and some other colleagues, David Patterson and Sherwin Holler, members of Parliament, presented on behalf of the opposition on this bill, folks. Take a listen to some of what we said in the National Assembly last week. And when we come back, we can be talking with the expert on the subject matter, Dr. Vincent Adams. We're going to be talking to him on the other side. But first, take a listen to some of what myself and colleagues said in the National Assembly recently, and we see Doc on the other side. Take a look, take a listen.
Mr. Speaker, this is an absurdity. It's an absurd behavior, Mr. Speaker. The PPP must immediately discontinue their appeal against Justice Kissone's ruling and direct the EPA to enforce his ruling before we vote on this bill, Mr. Speaker. And additionally, they must apologize to this nation. They must apologize for being unpatriotic. They must apologize for wasting taxpayers' monies. Mr. Speaker, you know what? They must also apologize to White and Collins for challenging that lawsuit for full liability coverage and pay their court costs. That is what they must do. Mr. Speaker, let me remind this nation of what the Honorable Jagdeo said very often in the public domain. He often said that EEPGL, now called ExxonMobil Guyana, the subsidiary of Exxon, had $20 million in assets. Then he started to say that they had about 16 billion, and then we heard about 14 billion. Eventually, during the appeal, Mr. Speaker, the appeal of Justice Kissone's decision, we learned that the PPP secretly made a deal with Exxon to cap the liabilities to $2 billion and refused to produce the signed agreement. I can clearly recall, Mr. Speaker, we all can recall the Honorable Dattadin misleading his house through his directions that any of us can go to the EPA and see the document. It was never allowed. It was never allowed, Comrade Dattadin. It was never. You misleaded us. You misleaded the house, Mr. Speaker.
This is the PPP and their promises. Their goals, their promises deliver. Accountability. Sir, not a single audit has been completed, sir. Despite the first audit, sir, the contract was signed under with the APA and UFC government in 2018. That has not yet been finalized and they're still talking about it. The final report, sir, I noticed that the final report for the second audit has not been publicly available, sir. The initial report, the draft, has been on the ministry website for over a year. 7 years, sir, has passed, and the PPP cannot even be accountable to the nation, sir. Sir, they will leave office and it will take the new administration to complete what we started in 2018. Ladies and gentlemen, on the backdrop of these failed promises, the commonly held view that Bill 7 of 2025 was laid here, and I restate them, for two reasons: to neutralize the court ruling and for electioneering purposes. Since this bill fails to provide the protection necessary that our citizens have been demanding, examining the various clauses of the bill, we can see the true intent of the PPP. Remember, this is a PPP that promised to regulate the oil sector independent of politicians. Sir, this new bill, sir, establishes 5 new boards: the Civil Defense Commission, the National Oil Spill Committee, the Oil Spill Incident Board of Inquiry, and the National Emergency Operations Center. In total, sir, I counted, sir, almost 40 members. All, sir, all other than 4 are appointed by the minister or as a nominee of the government, of a government agency. Sir, Mr. Speaker and ladies and gentlemen, not even the National Two-Shows Council was afforded the opportunity to name a nominee, even though several indigenous villages will be directly affected in the event of an oil spill. Imagine that the indigenous communities have no voice. Our indigenous brothers and sisters who have been protectors of our forests and coastline for centuries cannot even be recognized now that oil is being produced.
And if you can dazzle them with brilliance, you baffle them with other stuff, and that's what they want to do here. They're trying to baffle us. Overlapping legislation, financial burdens to the taxpayers. Who exactly pays at the end of the day? The judgment of the Honorable Justice Kissoon is so clear, but this government seeks to dilute liability and to dilute legal obligations. And this is what this government is seeking to do. I want to commend the members of the judiciary, even when they do not rule in our favor. We have never sought to go around them to create legislation to justify our injustices in this country. And we have seen it on several fronts. We were here in this National Assembly when the court ruled against them on the Peters Hall housing issue and say they have to give the people market value for their property and they have to give them time. The government brought a legislation to change all of that. We saw this movie before. And so Justice Sandil Kissoon came with this historic judgment, and now they're coming through the back door because they don't like to obey the law. They don't like the front door. And they don't like systems. They like the back door. They like the back door. So these are things the stakeholders have put out there. Dilution of liability and legal obligation. But this is not the government, let us be clear, is fighting for the people of this country. No, they aren't doing that. They sought, for instance, to take pay from the nurses after installing Rudy Small in Linden. And those nurses strike because he was so disrespectful, like this government. They sought to take the pay from the nurses. The court has said let the nurses receive their full pay. To this day, this caring government fighting the nurses in the court. I said that as a stepping stone to say that the government has chosen to join with Exxon, not as a regulator, but as a partner. And that is what Justice Sandil Kissoon said in this historic legislation. Now, it's the same justice, I think, delivered that historic verdict, was it? Remind me. With the Ghana Teachers Union. Watch them coming now to do something, because it is in the nature when judgments don't suit them. They change the law. They change the law. So watch them with that. The judge was clear. The judge was clear on several issues. As a matter of fact, the judge said, let the dues be remitted to the union. I don't know if the government is in compliance. I do not know if the government is in compliance with that. So we understand how this government always, on the face of it, yes, we're passing legislation, but there's mischief afoot in that. Mischief. When we saw the police outside Doubleday, we should have known. Afoot. The parents can't go inside. Mischief. Who pans wet, mysterious woman, all kinds of things. There's mischief. Mischief afoot. Dr. Vincent Adams, a very good evening and welcome to our broadcast on such short notice. No, you're a very, very busy guy.
Good evening, Sharon, and good evening to your wonderful listeners. And no, I'm always available whenever you need me, Sharon. You know that.
I am very happy, and this is such a time when we need you, Doc. I know you've been following this issue, this recent issue, very, very closely. This bill, this oil pollution prevention and preparedness response and responsibility bill of 2025. It's a mouthful. They call it the oil spill prevention bill for short. And I saw a fantastic letter to you, from you rather, in the press on this matter. I know lots of our viewers might not have had the chance yet to read that letter, but in this letter you talk about the deliberate attempt to overturn Justice Kissoon's letter, Justice Kissoon's ruling, rather, Justice Sandil Kissoon's ruling mandating what is called unlimited liability via a parent company guarantee. And folks, just so you know, it's not only Dr. Vincent Adams, the former head of the Environmental Protection Agency in Guyana, who has some issues with this bill. We have seen out there in the public sphere attorneys like Malanda Janki, a prominent environmental attorney. She has said she's called this bill unconstitutional. And as you told us too, she's characterized it as a grave abuse of power. Dr. Adams and also Christopher Ram, an accountant and attorney, he has called the bill the undoing of Justice Sandil Kissoon's ruling, and he has identified and highlighted some legal and technical flaws in this bill. Doc, for Guyanese who are not familiar with the bill so much, give us some background, which we might touch on some of how we came about to this matter being taken to court and arriving at Justice Sandil Kissoon's ruling. Take us from there, and then we'll talk about this bill and where we are now. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sharon. First of all, let me put it into perspective what this bill means in terms of the consequences to not only Guyana but to the entire Caribbean without a full protection guarantee or what we call unlimited liability coverage. What has happened here, Sharon? And here's the background. What these major oil companies, all major companies normally do to insulate, they like to insulate themselves from liabilities. So the first thing that they do is to insulate themselves is to form, guess what? And what is called a limited liability subsidiary company. So that's what Exxon did. Exxon formed as Exxon Mobil Guyana Limited, EMGL, which is the limited liability company, has no assets initially when they formed it, none. So if something happens, if there's a spill, EMGL, according to even to the contract, EMGL will be the party. They sign all of the documents. Exxon. So when people talk about Exxon, the big guy who has the deep pockets, their name is not on any document. Their signature is not on any document. It's this child company that has no assets to cover a spill. Their signature is in it. So if something happens, EMGL declares bankruptcy and Exxon walks away. So what the coalition did, the coalition said, hey, wait a minute. We need a guarantee that if something happens, somebody got it, it has to be covered. So that is how we instituted or put into law what we call the parent company guarantee, meaning that Exxon has to sign to say that if EMGL cannot cover it, then we Exxon will cover everything over and beyond. It's nothing different, Sharon. So let's say you have a child and that has a health insurance. You take the child to a doctor, and your insurance for that child may cover 70%. You are responsible for that 30% out of your pocket, but that doctor has to get their full 100%. It's the same exact thing. If there's a spill, it has to be covered, and unless the government cannot afford to cover anything. So that is how we put this unlimited liability coverage in it to say Exxon, well, Exxon said, not Exxon, EMGL says they're going to go get insurance. Well, it doesn't matter how much the insurance costs. What we put into law was anything over and above that insurance, Exxon has to cover. Sherrod, and people need to hear this, okay? Exxon agreed to it and signed the documents for it in the permit. They signed the permit saying, okay, we agree. We agree that we will get insurance, and anything over and above that insurance that EMGL cannot cover, we, the big boys, Exxon, the parent, will cover it. They signed it. When we, meaning the coalition, left office, the first thing that this government did was to go and decide to renege on it to please Exxon. Exxon had pushed back on us, by the way, and we said, well, you're not going to produce a barrel of oil unless you sign this document. As soon as the coalition left office, the first thing they did, they went and they reneged and said, hey, no, we're not going to honor this, even though it's into law. But that's the lawlessness that this government engages in. That's what triggered the lawsuit from Collins and White that went before Justice Kissoon that ruled overwhelmingly in favor of Collins and White, in favor of the coalition's language. As a matter of fact, Sherrod, here's just a small excerpt of what the judge said. The judge said, the language that was written into the permit by the coalition was expressed in clear, unambiguous terms, and such a course of action to violate the permit is made permissible only by a derelict, pliant, and submissive EPA, which has descended into a state of slumber at the critical juncture of an emerging oil sector and has, at every juncture, engaged in a course of action to undermine and erode the terms and conditions of its own permit. And listen to this, and that the government, listen again, Sherrod, the government is submissive and relegated itself to a state of laxity and abdicated its responsibility, thereby putting this nation and its people in grave potential danger of calamitous disaster. So that's the
very strong language. Very strong language, Dr. Adams. Very strong language from the court. And I want to underscore before you go on and walking us through this issue that you have said it was the coalition government that had mandated this a system of insurance and parent company guarantee.
That's exactly
and you've emphasized in this fantastic letter you wrote that unlimited liability does not mean unlimited insurance, but rather a costless paper guarantee from Exxon to cover any shortfall. It's pellucid, like you said, clear and unambiguous language.
Excellent. I'm glad you raised that point, because we've got these guys. Here is this man who calls himself the chief legal the chief legal officer, I guess, for the nation, and he does not even understand the difference between insurance and assurance. He comes out from day one. He comes out and criticizing this thing and say, well, there's no such thing as unlimited insurance. It's impossible. The premium would be exorbitant. Nobody can cover that. It is not insurance. It is unlimited guarantee. It's an unlimited guarantee. It's a paper. It's a piece of paper from Exxon saying we'll cover everything over and above what the insurance does not cover. But what has happened? The Exxon had a lot of respect for the coalition. They have no respect, none whatsoever, for this government. And you know, I grew up, Sherrod, and I grew up in Albaiston and Christianborg, two places where, you know, one of the most challenging areas to grow up. And you know, they're tough neighborhoods. And if you find anybody that is weak, or what we call a paku, you bust the back and put salt in it, they cannot survive. That's what Exxon has found in this government. They found the paku and they're taking advantage of them. You listen with it, what the judge said. The government is submissive, and relegated itself to a state of laxity and abdicated its responsibility, thereby putting this nation and its people in grave potential danger of calamitous disaster. And here's the other nonsense that that Nandalal spouted. Well, no, it is going to drive unlimited guarantee is going to drive away investors. Well, how come Exxon signed off? It didn't drive Exxon away. You know what's going to drive? You know what's driving investors off, Sherrod? Not following the rule of law. That's why Guyana is ranked 76th out of 142 countries when it comes to following the rule of law. Our score was 50 out of 100, and you get 50 out of 100. It's F or F minus. That's why. And what would drive investors away is the unsafeness of a country. And right now, I think we're number 3. We are level 3 in terms of advisory, in terms, not to come together. We're level 3. The highest level is 4. We're already level 3. That's what drives investors now. Not this foolishness about unlimited liability coverage. Exxon signed off on it, and it's you guys, because you went and after you not only did you thought that it would have ended there, the government would have saved face and say, well, okay, it's Exxon. No, they went all the way to the Caribbean Court of Justice to join Exxon, to fight against its own people, exactly what the judge says, in an appeal, Sharon. And then what happened here, Sharon, they realized that this year will be on the ballot. So this year they decided to come with this hoax, this scam, somehow with this bill to say, well, they started off, by the way, Sharon, by saying it's unlimited. You remember before the bill was published, I even wrote an article about it. Before the bill was published, they said, oh, this year there will be no limits, no cap. That was Jagdeo and Nandalal. And then suddenly, I couldn't believe he went into Parliament and said, no limit, no cap does not mean unlimited. Well, I don't know what's the difference between no limit and unlimited. Now, you tell me, any third grade English student. But he's all over the place, Nandalal. He's all over the place. So that's where we are. It's a big hoax. They promise in that language unlimited liability coverage. And then when they got into Parliament, as you know, you and MP Holder,
Sherwin Holder and David Patterson,
you guys did a wonderful job, and they couldn't come. They had no argument against it, and they come up with a lot of frivolous nonsense that even Nandalal just went up there and he was just reading from the bill. He does not understand the substance of the bill. He started talking about responsible parties going to respond. That's already into law.
Doc, I'm happy that you said that, because when the judgment of Justice Sandal Kissoon was handed down, when the judgment of the court was handed down, it was Vice President Jagdeo who had launched a scathing attack on the judge, saying that he didn't understand anything about oil and gas. And Jagdeo, who has no qualifications in oil and gas, he was proffering to the judge what should have obtained in this case. And now you say that Nandalal doesn't understand this period, but they seem to be the repository of all wisdom, the fountain of all knowledge. And you have said that now that this judgment has been handed down, that you have seen what you described as Putin-esque authoritarianism and the undermining of the judiciary. And you said that this personal attack on the judge during the parliamentary debate by MP and AG Nandalal, it's horrific. And you suggest that this perhaps should even qualify as contempt of court. Talk to us about the legislation now and what they're hoping to do. The mischief is to really and truly have this guarantee in legislation, but yet you appealing the guarantee in the court. It seems a little bit misplaced and hypocritical. Doc, walk us through the legislation as you see it, please and thank you.
I'm glad that you touched on Nandalal and his contemptuousness for the judge in Parliament. What Nandalal was doing in Parliament was retrying the case in any democratic country. That is contempt, and he would have been brought before the law for contempt. And this man gets up there and lambasts the judge, calling, even suggesting that the judge basically does not, I guess, doesn't have comprehension skills. But here's what the bill. First of all, like I said, Nandalal does not understand the key concept of what it's intended. He goes in and he reads stuff. He's just reading words from the bill that is already into law. He reads a whole list of things. If it's a ship, if it's a boat, if it's a this, it doesn't matter who it is. They're going to be held liable, responsible party. Well, heck, that's already into basic law. Okay, it's called polluter pay principle. You're not a list who is responsible. Anybody on the planet come, you pollute, you got to pay. Polluter pays principle. It's into law. So, but what he doesn't understand, it's just saying that the responsible party is responsible for any spill doesn't mean that they are going to cover it if they do not have the means to cover it. And if you come close to home with our typical example, which is what I went through, EMGL does not have any assets. So EMGL is the one on the hook. So what happens if you get a spill? EMGL can't cover it. They pack up their bags, they declare bankruptcy, and Exxon, you can't even go after Exxon because it even says that in the bill. They've even diluted what Judge Kassoon said and what we had in the bill. They even went forward to make it explicit in the bill at number 21 to say that the responsible party cannot transfer liability. That means you cannot take it to you cannot even go after the parent company because the liability cannot be transferred. They make certain that happened. But yet, I could not believe I was looking at Nandalal yesterday in his diatribe. Again, in his diatribe, Nandalal says that they can go after the parent company. Well, if you're saying, he's saying, well, we had them remove the parent company guarantee. Now, Cheryl, tell me, does this man take people for fools, or he himself is just ignorant and stupid? If you hadn't changed anything in terms of the parent company guarantee, which was there before, and which is what the judge ruled in, why the hell are you still going into an appeal? What you're saying there, you're repeating the same thing that you're telling people that you were proposing in the bill, even though it's not there. But it's a clear scam. It is not there in the bill, but you're telling people that it's there. That's a scam. And let me address another thing here, Sharon, just to show you the lies of this man. Okay, this man goes after Melinda Janke, and he cannot carry water for Melinda Janke. He goes after Melinda Janke, and he says, and I got this quotes here. He says, Melinda Janke, the law, he said the EPA Act, which
she doesn't understand it. She doesn't understand the act. I think that's part of what he said.
Well, he said worse than this, Cheryl. Listen to what the man said. This is a blatant lie or ignorance.
That's what he said.
He said the EPA Act, which Melinda Janke is now holding up and hailing, was passed by the PPP in 1996. That's a fact. But listen to what he said. He said that was long before we ever heard about Janke, long before she accumulated any environmental credentials, long before the Jankes came on the scene, long before anyone ever heard of a person named Janke. These things were put into the act. We, the PPP, laid the foundation for environmental protection in this country, which she's now holding up against it. Sharon, would you want to guess who wrote the EPA Act?
I am like those students who already know the answer.
Let me tell you.
Tell us that.
I hope you're sitting tight. Melinda Janke.
Wow. So it turns out that he's the one who don't really understand a couple of things.
Melinda Janke wrote the EPA Act. Let me tell you. The act, and it's not the EPA, not the PPP that came up with this brilliant idea. That, as you recall, Cheryl, you might be too young here now. You know, you're a young kid.
Talk to us.
But you know what created this act? The spill, the cyanide spill that we had. I think it was Omai in 1990.
Omai, correct.
So that's what triggered the act. The PPP Jagon went and hired some consultants. They brought in the first draft, and it was a piece of crap. And then the IDB paid Melinda Janke to rewrite that document. So this idiot is the Janke is way before she doesn't know anything, before she even came on the scene. Could you believe that, Sharon? This is the lady that wrote the act, and he's just so ignorant and coming with his foolishness.
Doc, you said that that the Attorney General has misled Parliament, basically by attributing a cap to a judge, when in fact it was previously an agreed figure. You've said that the EPA has refused to disclose this verifying of the 2 billion surety unless compelled by a court order. I mean, even the justice, and saying that, but even by saying that, the EPA has confirmed what the judge had said initially, that this government is acting more like a partner of Exxon and not as a regulator. And you talked about raising questions of transparency and all of that. I mean, some of this, Dr. Vincent Adams, is mind-boggling, simply mind-boggling. You talked about the Attorney General and Vice President Jagdeo reversing positions, suddenly claiming to support unlimited liability in this weird way. And you talked also about their interpretations of phrases like no limit on liability as not meaning unlimited, and you described it as deliberately deceptive. Talk to us about some of this.
Yeah, initially, when you remember when before the bill came out, Jagdeo and Nanalab came out with a little thing to, I guess, prepare people with the hoax. He said it doesn't limit liability. No cap on the liability. Well, of course, we all know that's simple English. It means unlimited. But then says in Parliament, there's no limit, and then says in Parliament, no limit and no cap do not mean unlimited. And then they came in Nandalal's. It is a diatribe yesterday, and I marked this here because people should go check for themselves, because this thing is sung so unbelievable that people may not want to believe. At minute 38, he said, "Where is there a limit to liability in this language?" He's saying again, there's no liability. At minute 40.21, he says, "This does not limit liability at all, at none." We said no cap liability, none. Wherever the damage flows, liability runs with the damage. So that's what he said. 5 minutes after, not even good 5 minutes after, Sharon, the man said, there is no such thing in the same diatribe. There's no such thing as unlimited liability. 5 minutes in the same thing yesterday. Then he said, the EPA assesses risk to get and how it is unlimited. Where is that? I challenge him to show me where the EPA does an assessment and the process. But here's the most foolishness, Sharon. Listen to this. The man said, we don't put a cap, but it cannot be unlimited. Now, Sharon, did you hear what I just said? We don't put a cap.
Correct.
But it can be limited. It can be unlimited. And then he said, unlimited doesn't exist, but you look at the risk and assess insurance to address the risk. So he's all over the place, and I don't know if it's willfully trying to confuse people or he himself is just confused. He's confused through his ignorance. You see, when you're lying and especially when you're ignorant to the fact, it's very dangerous. But these people, but what happened here, Sharon? What has happened here? Why they've confused and they're so much in a tizzy? They knew that this year will be on the ballot, so they're trying to come with this scam. They did not expect this kind of backlash. They decided to come with this scam, and they don't have their facts together because they can't come up with anything. Because the first thing people are asking, well, if you're saying that this thing is unlimited, that's the same thing you're fighting against in court. Withdraw the appeal to convince us, but they can't, because that's not what's in the bill. So they're between a rock and a hard place and coming up with nonsense. And he's coming up and going on this program and you know just talking foolishness. But here's another question. The real question. Let's say, for example, because I want him to explain where in that bill it says, which is it doesn't because the only thing that did that was what the coalition had in the law, and what Judge Kissoon upheld is you have to cover everything over insurance. So let's put a scenario here, Sherrod. I want him to answer the direct scenario. If there's a spill, the Macondo site spill, the British Petroleum Macondo spill in the Gulf, we call it. It spilled for 8 to 9 days, cost 145 billion US dollars. If we get a spill like that, Sharon, who is going to cover that? Our entire national budget is 5 billion US dollars. Who's going to cover a spill? How are we going to cover a spill for 145 billion? And on top of that, we will wipe away the Caribbean. Trinidad will be the first to go from north to south. The whole East Coast will be gone within a few days. And guess which one is coming after Trinidad, Sharon? It goes all the way to Jamaica. But guess who's coming after Venezuela?
Yeah.
And could you imagine you want to give Maduro an excuse if you think that them little firing that you got to, when our people are talking about shoot and scoot, I don't know what would become, because if they're telling us you got to shoot and scoot now, that we really shooting and scooting if we flood their coast with oil.
Doc, what you've said on this matter, basically, if I'm to sum it up, is that what we do on this bill could make or break us as a country on several fronts. Now, I've had a chance to see an oil spill in Trinidad and Tobago, albeit not a crude oil spill, but nonetheless with much of the same effects. And so I understand acutely how an oil spill can affect neighbors as well, because some of that oil got as far as Venezuela, as you rightfully mentioned, and even Grenada and some other Caribbean countries had some of the effects of this oil spill in Trinidad and Tobago. You did talk about this $2 billion U.S. parent company guarantee is a fraction of this 145 billion cost of the BP Macondo spill. But as we wrap up, Doc, I want you to outline for Guyanese the kinds of effects, not only financially, but physically and otherwise, that an oil spill can have on a country, and why it's so important for us as a nascent oil-producing economy and country to get this right.
Well, first of all, look at the Caribbean. Guess what we depend on? Tourism and fishing, and that's and then of course the ecological part of it. You know, we're one of the gems in the world when it comes to the ecology, maintaining our ecology, our pristine ecology. So, Sherrod, you are absolutely correct. You are in Trinidad or in Tobago. You know what the size of that spill, Sherrod? I think it was like 30,000 barrels. If you know, was the Macondo spill, like I think it was about 5 million barrels. Okay, every single day, Sherrod, every day, we have at least maybe about one ship per day, a little bit less than one ship per day that comes from Guyana, passes through the Caribbean with 1 million barrels. Did you hear what I said? That 1,000 barrels per day was a one-time thing. Almost every single day at 750,000 barrels per day, we have one of those tankers with oil that passes through the Caribbean with 1 million barrels. And when we double that production, we will have more than one ship per day with 1 million barrels passing through the Caribbean. So you can imagine the risk. Now, on top of that risk, you have a blowout, which is what happened in the Macondo. So that's another risk. And then you have a third risk, of course, where the government is allowing Exxon to violate our own law by producing above the safe operating limit that can cause a spill. So you've got all of these things that are causing a spill, but you have no prevention. Now, here's another big lie or ignorance on the part of these guys. You remember they start, I don't know because it rolls off or they tongue nicely. Do you remember they talking about this capping stock? First of all, Barrett needs to keep his mouth shut because, you know, I'm tired of him just spouting nonsense that he doesn't even have a clue what he's talking about. So both Barrett and Nandalal start talking this capping stuff. Nandalal, with his nonsense, say, well, okay, we're forced to have a capping stock here. Trinidad operated for 100 years and they never used a capping stock. Well, Sherrod, you know when the capping stock was invented? It was invented after the Macondo spill. So we are one of the force because it was invented and what it was, because you remember it flowed for 8 to 9 days, right? So what it was invented for was a big lid to come and put on top of the well. It's heavy, it's like 50 to 100 tons to stop that flow. So you can tell the most important criteria is to getting it on that ship as soon as possible. Myself and Dr. Bino directed Exxon to get it there in 3 days from the south of Trinidad, because we no way we could have got it out of Guyana. We told them in a long-term plan they need to give us a plan to get it out of Guyana, but right now we didn't have the logistics to get it out of Guyana. 3 days. So in the Payara permit, and then Nandalal again is ignorant. He said that they're the ones who introduced it, not the coalition. They're the ones who introduced it in the Yellowtail. It was the coalition that introduced it in the Payara that says 5 days, but before you start up, you need to give us a plan to bring it down to 3 days. And it was coming out the south of Trinidad. Notice, you know what they did when we left office, Sherrod? They are now bragging that they brought it to Guyana, and they tripled that time to 9 days. Tripling. So that's a potential now of tripling the amount of time, the 6 days, an extra 6 days that all will be flowing. But they were not the one who brought in this capping stuff. So here again, it's a blatant lie that they're peddling, or it's just sheer ignorance.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that, Doc. I'm certain our Guyanese folks at home and abroad are more enlightened on this very issue because of all that you have said. Because we understand how the PPP operate, and you've mentioned it's smoke and mirrors, and because we're coming into this election season, they have been on the side of ExxonMobil all the time versus the Guyanese people. And now that we're heading towards a general and regional election, suddenly, they were the ones who proffered the cap and stock. They were the ones who wanted the parent company guarantee. They were the ones who wanted to negotiate. And they would be at pains to tell you how much they have renegotiated the PSC of 2016. But these are the duplicitous folks that we have to deal with. And all of these things, Doc, I'm certain you tell the public is on the ballot.
Yep. Here's another big lie. I mean, we can go on for the rest of the program here
I know you could.
But here's another one that they keep lying about every single day, especially Jaggi. As soon as they're open, but there isn't a session that says that it was the PNC who signed all of these things. Their hands are tied, these conditions. Sharon, here is the real story.
Tell us.
Even Nandalal said that yesterday, that the PNC was the one who signed the very forced license. Sharon, guess how many total contracts that were signed? 9. 9.
Mm-hmm. When was the first one signed?
Guess in 1999. Guess who it was signed by? Janet Jacob.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Guess how many were signed by the PPP before the PNC took office? 7 out of those 9.
Wow.
7. Okay?
Wow.
7 out of those 9. Those signed. But here's the other thing. All of the clauses that they talked about, the stability clause and the renegotiation clause, that they keep lying to say that those are the exact same clause that were in those 7 before the PNC took over. And all the PNC did was to copy those clauses, which is, it's a norm. I'm not saying that they should have done that. As a matter of fact, the PNC, if you want to put it this way, because put it on record, I was probably the first person to come out and criticize. And you can go back to, whoever wants to check, they can go back to, I think it was March the 4th of 2018, the front page cover story in the Starbucks News saying, when I was calling for renegotiation and a signing bonus of $1 billion. It's there. But everything now, well, you see, it's because of what they put into the contract. Every single one of those contracts, and the 7 that they signed before the PNC signed it to, had the same exact line. The PNC even improved it by doubling the royalty from 1% to 2%.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that,
and then they were talking. You know, we're in that period where they talk about the signing bonus and the stealing of the signing bonus and the missing 18 million. But we took a case, a very important case, before the ICJ that concerns our borders and this controversy we have with Venezuela, and that had to be paid for. We tell people all the time, this is not a cheap endeavor to carry matters before the ICJ, and that is what that money was used for. But the PPP kept lying, knowing fully well, right, agreeing to on what should be the course of action in terms of taking this matter there and how it should be paid for, and then coming back later to say that the money was missing and the money was stolen and all of that. The same PPP, same old PPP.
And before we could, because this here is important, Sharon.
Tell us that. Talk to us.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question here. What is most despicable is there's no question that this here, what this bill does, and they've admitted it, by the way. He has admitted to going after this judge. He says, first of all, you know, and I have it in my letter, it's a betrayal of an unrelenting assault on the democracy by the skin of the teeth of their single majority, emasculating the judiciary by fiat of the parties. That's what they're doing, Sharon.
Correct.
And it was no secret in the way that he went. This is Nandalal, in the way that he went after Judge Kassoon, where he said, oh yeah, here it is. This man said, I mean, there's no question. Here's the admission of exactly what we were saying, that they're using this here to get rid of Judge Kassoon. He said, unlimited guarantee is not an animal known in the legal world. Here's what he said, Sharon. Must we allow decisions to remain on record that doesn't make sense in law? He said, must we be allowed to remain frustrated by an ill-informed decision by court? He said, it would be highly responsible to leave that decision on the public record.
Yeah. That is not for a higher court to overturn that court decision. And this is my interpretation of what you said in terms of the assault on democracy. When the court in a democracy rule a certain way, if you don't like it, you can go to the legislature and find a back door to get what you want by legislating using your 1-seat majority to get your way. And that's what you call a democracy. Wow.
Yeah, when he wasn't finished, he said, it is a misnomer, and that is the problem with this ruling. Listen to this, Sharon. He went further. He said, the decision distorts the law of the country, and no other investor will come to the sector. The decision distorts the law. That's what he's saying about the judge ruling in this country. You want to tell me that's not autocratic and dictatorial?
Yeah.
And so that's what this whole, those are his own admission of the act that they perform. No question. He has admitted it, that's their intention here. It has nothing to do with the bill, and we see that we see what the bill is. But here, even if this is the last thing, I really want this for. I have been asking, Sharon, you recall in a lot of my missive, for a debate for any one of them. As a matter of fact, I challenged Jagdi and Nandalal, and I told them,
any one of the experts, Jagdi or Nandalal,
all of them, and I told them let them bring Exxon, let Exxon bring in their people, all of them. I can tell. But so here's why the man said, I almost fell out of my chair. The man said, and I know it's a bluff, but we can keep pressure off them. The man said, these guys would not sit down with you and debate you publicly. I'm prepared to do that. Let us go on the TV. They would never do that because I would like to do that. Well, Sharon, I'm saying, please, let us arrange a debate tomorrow. as soon as possible. I accept your challenge. I've been asking for it. And now that you've accepted the challenge, it sounds like I am ready, willing, and able at any time.
Yeah.
And I want, Sheriff, for you to make sure you start advertising that debate.
Exactly. I'm happy that you fired up and ready to go. Thank you so much, Doc, for coming by and talking to us on this issue. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks as usual, Sheriff.
Guyana, it's the PNCR Pre-Independence Fundraising Bingo on Sunday, the 25th of May from 2 p.m. at Congress Place, Sophia. There will be 3 coverall games at $1 million per game, 3 letter games at $200,000 per game, 20 straight games at $100,000 per game. $6,000 gets you 6 tickets. Remember, it's the PNCR Pre-Independence Fundraising Bingo on Sunday, the 25th of May from 2 p.m. at Congress Place, Sophia. Put on your shoes and come on out.
All right, so we had to pay some bills there. Welcome back. Got to pay the bills, and thank you very, very much, Dr. Vincent Adams, walking us through the many issues there in oil and gas, and especially this oil pollution, this oil pollution bill, the oil spill bill, a short name for it. And thank you so much, Doc. Always calls when we call on him. And folks, here are some of the other stories we're following. Listen to Robeson Ben here. Listen to Robeson Ben, Minister of Public Security, Minister of Home Affairs. Tell me if Robeson Ben making sense in other news. And then, folks, the leader of the opposition takes on Sonia Parag. Some of the other things we're following tonight. Take a listen. Take a look.
Home Affairs Minister Robeson Ben told the National Assembly on Friday that he was unaware of the presence of any Venezuelan gang in Guyana. He said that he can say that there are gangs in Guyana,
where it appears that there were recently a number of gangs on the move, facilitated, fostered, supplied, and that some members on the other side were in appearance in relation to the activities of those gangs.
In France, was the protesters who took to the streets in the wake of the call for justice for 11-year-old Adriana Young were gang members.
The burning of the streets, the burning of the buildings, the beating of persons, the looting of stores, the attacks on innocent people, all in furtherance of making political capital out of what is indeed a tragedy.
The question of organized Venezuelan gangs was another matter.
As of the current date, the Ministry of Home Affairs, in collaboration with joint services, including the Guyana Police Force, the Guyana Defense Force, and the Guyana Immigration Department, has not officially confirmed the presence of organized gang known as Tren de Aragua or any other similarly structured foreign gang operating within the borders of Guyana.
He said that there have been reports of cross-border criminal activities.
There is no verified evidence to suggest that the Tren de Aragua gang has established an operational base or presence in Guyana. Nevertheless, the Ministry and the Joint Services remain vigilant and are actively monitoring the border areas, particularly regions 1, 7, 8, and 9.
He said that surveillance patrols and the relationship with regional counterparts are being intensified.
Should any credible intelligence arise, immediate action will be taken in accordance with national security protocols to safeguard the sovereignty and safety of the nation.
There have been reported gang activity in Guyana, and Minister Ben actually told the nation that Venezuelans represent the fastest growing population in the prisons. When a magistrate signed an order rescinding a decision to remand a West Coast Bobby's resident to prison, a minister of the government threatened legal action against the People's National Congress reform. The People's National Congress reform had reported the demand said that a minister called the magistrate. Recently, leader of the People's National Congress reform, Aubrey Norton, said that his party stood by the initial report.
If you look at our post yesterday, you would see we got the case file. And on the case file, the magistrate stated that he was remanded to prison. And then the next day, he was released. So we know it is accurate to say that all of them were remanded, but only this one PPP activist was released.
A number of people were charged and remanded at the same time.
Why, if no crime had occurred or no mismanagement, why did you move the magistrate? Because immediately after this became known, they moved the magistrate. I believe the removing of the magistrate is an attempt to protect the minister.
He said that it's a tradition for the government to sacrifice public servants for its political interests.
One of the hallmarks of the People's Progressive Party is that they always take action to appear to do something, but in essence, they do nothing. If you go back, we were promised a thorough investigation into the death of Orrin Boston. Until now, none. This government is prone to arresting innocent people and put them in the lockup, but doing everything to ensure the guilty goes free. And we have to keep objecting to that.
And there you have it, folks. There you have it. There you have it. Lady opposition, mischief afoot. Mischief afoot. Good, folks. What else can we say? Mischief afoot. Mischief afoot. And look, it wouldn't be a good day if we didn't have some accident in the roadways. Guyana has the most dangerous roadways in the world. We didn't have a fire. And folks, today was such a day. Believe it or not. A truck went off one of the bridges there on the Linden-Suzek Highway, one of those big construction trucks. Apparently lost control, went up the bridge, and by then we caught up on the scene there. The number plate for the van gone, for the truck, the number plate gone, the driver missing as well. This is Guyana, folks. This is Guyana. Number plate missing, the driver missing as well. And then in Latem, a truck went on the side of the road. The driver lost control and went off the side of the road there in Latem. Ain't no easy day, folks. Ain't no easy day. Mount Sinai. This is not New York. This is New Amsterdam. The other New Amsterdam. A house was damaged by fire today. And thankfully, because God resides in Guyana, nobody was injured. Nobody was home. The fire damaged the building. 5 persons, we were told, resides in this house, Mount Sinai, there in New Amsterdam. And our thoughts and prayers with the drivers in these mishaps and the family that are counting the losses tonight. Yep, our thoughts and prayers with them. Forgive us, we didn't get to shout out you guys like we used to, like we usually do. But we're going to see you guys in the next one. Remember, we're going to do that on the next one. But remember, here's what I really want you all to remember. Folks, we're going to be off tomorrow because movements, boots on the ground, movements, boots on the ground. I ain't going to tell you all yet where I'm heading tomorrow, but it's to bring you all valid and credible information. We're going to be out until Tuesday because Monday is a holiday. We're coming back into the city on Monday. So you're not going out of the city. We're coming back on Monday. Happy Independence in advance. Happy Independence in advance. That means we're going to see you guys on Tuesday. That is what it means effectively. We're going to see you guys back here on Tuesday. Thank you guys so much for being here with us over the last 4 days. Folks, you all know it's not proper without y'all. You know, our FYI family and our In the Ring folks. Thank you guys so much from the bottom of our hearts. You're going to hear from us during the course of the day tomorrow and into the weekend. We got a weekend coming up. We got a Venezuelan issue. We're watching at that bogus election. We're watching at that. Stay safe, folks. We're going to see you guys on the next one. Stay safe and have a fantastic rest of the evening. Stay safe.